Today, you go to the Musée d'Orsay and it's all jumbled together. So things can get more confused as you move away from them too. I'd like to kind of just briefly address this in a kind of broader way. The question, which I think has some bearing here, of what the individual does at a particular time in relation to what else is going on at a time. Because there is often this idea that certain styles at certain moments reflect the zeitgeist, are a kind of mirror of what's going on, and therefore at a certain moment, a certain painter doing a certain kind of thing is really kind of feeling the core of what's happening. And then they're celebrated for that. And that kind of celebration can really affect an artist's reputation for generations after that. I see a really big problem with this way of looking at periods, and what people sometimes call periodization, I guess the academics call it. Because to me, there are all kinds of stylistic predilections or predispositions that are simply parts of the human psyche. The inclination toward abstraction, the inclination toward representation, the inclination to make something that's very mysterious and enigmatic, the inclination to make something that's very, in some way, very out there and upfront, a coolness, a hotness. I think these are simply basic human inclinations that go back as far as people go back. And indeed, you look back to, go to the early rooms of the Greek and Roman galleries of the Met. There are artists or kinds of artists who are inclined toward abstraction. There are other ones who are inclined toward figuration, these incredibly voluptuous, sinuous, kind of yummy forms, and then you have at the same time Poussin doing these cool, geometricized, chilly paintings, and indeed Bernini thought Poussin's work was terrific. So my feeling is that at any time and any place, an artist can be inclined to be hot or cool, can be inclined toward abstraction or representation, and I think we do a great injustice to individual artists when we say that, you say about Myron Stout or Goindley or Ilya Boltowski in the 50s, you're doing a kind of cool geometric hard edge painting in the 50s. Well, you're not in sync with the zeitgeist. And then that gets, people are clobbered with, that's a bad mark on your reputation. When, as I look certainly at the history of the last 50 years, there are always people doing all kinds of different things. Now that doesn't mean that there isn't a zeitgeist. I think there is such a thing as a kind of spirit of a time. But an artist has free will and can react to that in all different kinds of ways. I mean, when you think about the turmoil of the late 60s, the political turmoil, the social turmoil, well, there are a lot of ways one could respond to that.
Phong Bui.
But since you are talking about this very subject, it just occurred to me to show that David Reed and Katie Siegel in abstract painting, experiment painting, high time and hot time, 1967, 75. Have you seen it at the National Academy? That's a great example, great instance where it has been put under the carpet. But I like to shift the subject to something else because we talk about Walt Jackson here. I remember in my senior year reading the famous essay by Isaiah Berlin. It's called The Hedgehog and the Fox. And I was very annoyed by the first paragraph. But I have to provide a little bit basically to some of you might not have read it or you have forgotten. I just read it again recently. The Hedgehog and the Fox, whose title comes from a line, a long poem by the Greek philosopher Epictetus, the following: the fox may know many things, the hedgehog knows one big thing. And the basis of that was to try to deal with the great chasm between those who have ability to bring multitude of experiences and interest into one singular vision, and those who scatter and diffuse their thinking. So the first intellectual artistic temperament is attributed to the hedgehog, the second to the fox. And I was very disturbed and annoyed by the short distinction, but then the second paragraph, Berlin were able to extrapolate with great nuances, and finally citing Dostoevsky as the hedgehog and Tolstoy as a fox. And I was rather reassured by that because I think in the case of Walt Jackson, who I believe have similar affinity to another painter who I admire very much, and it's L.K. Morris. I believe they have the same kind of artistic, intellectual temperament, partly because, not at all based on their background. We know that L.K. Morris came from a very well-bred New England family. He'd gone to Groton School, Yale, and studied aviation in Paris. He's also the founder of the short-lived magazine called Miscellany. I happen to have one copy, very pleased. But because I believe that they were those who were able to do many things, and they had the same believability in the greater picture of social life in art. So more besides, what you have said already, the best thing that I heard was when you interviewed with your Vital Space website, when you say that he was a definitive New Yorker. I think in a similar way that could be applied to everyone, young people who go to New York in search of his or her own identity. Like the Kunin who came to New York from Holland, who was a gifted, talented house painter, and he had very much acknowledged that many times. Not until 1948, I think that was the first show at George Lee Egan, you're the historian, you can correct me if I'm wrong. He was 42 years old. Walt Jackson started out working in the mailroom during the construction of the Guggenheim Museum along with Dan Clayton. I'm telling you that because there are many things that you feel besides writing poetry, making painting in isolation. That's why I think if you can be the hedgehog, you can always try to be the fox. You can also think of in the parallel between what Morris done, L.K. Morris done as a painter, who in a way is responsible for to make accessibility of cubism, analytic, synthetic kind, and the kind of nearly conclusive cubist exemplified in the Mondrian painting. Walt Jackson, I think, synthesized cubist idiom with after expressions or over gesture. And at some point, he distilled some of the experience, maybe reacting against Greenbergian formalism, began to invest more in the reductivist thinking, which very much, again, make it accessible for young English artists. And that's my feeling of it. It's more than just the artist, but I think you're right. You're both right about the outsider, the marginal, what we think of today. Mainly I'm speaking because I'm not happy with what I have read recently.
Genuinely trying to correct something. So this is sort of recontextualizing work we're seeing. I would probably ask the inversion of that question, which is how does Deleget artists become well known for making this kind of abstraction? I mean, Phong, you mentioned hard times, which is a great example of this. I mean, you've got 30 artists, and I came to New York in the mid-90s, so these were artists that I had heard about and seen reproductions of maybe in Marcorum from the early 80s, late 70s, maybe an issue of Art America somewhere. But these are people who I've never seen an actual work.